Hey everybody, Hunter here. Wanted to give a quick tip about server actions and form data, specifically working with checkboxes and radio groups. I have my form here, which is hooking up to a server action. I did the hookup in a previous video. I'll link it in the cards up above. But this is what my server action file looks like. The function is called update account. It takes in form data and the user ID, and then it's going through this form schema parser, which looks like this. I'm using Zod to do some form validation here, and if we take a look at these seeking position values, it wants to be a boolean because that's what my database is storing. But let us try to submit this form and see what happens, because checkboxes are going to give us something strange if we're not careful. On the edit account component, which is where the actual form lives, we have the on submit. Here's where it's calling the update account. It's passing in the form data and the user ID. If we look for the on submit, I have it going into the form action right here. Alright, so let's try to submit this and see what happens. I'll go down here and hit save, and there's an error with form validation. Alright, that's because of these checkboxes right here. So if we take a look at the code under this, we're going to get the form data for seeking backend, and let's just see what this is real quick. We do a console.log. Alright, so I'm going to bring up my console over here, and I'm going to hit the submit button, and then you can see seeking backend checkbox is on. Alright, so that is not a boolean value. It's actually literally a string that says on. And that is not going to pass the validation, because in the validation, if you remember, we're looking for a boolean value. So what happens if we uncheck that box? So if I uncheck these boxes, and if I hit save, I'm going to get a error again, and now it's null. So if it's unchecked, the value is going to be null. If they're checked, then the value is going to be a string of on. Okay, so how do we change that into boolean values? Well, we can just simply say if this is a null, then we want to do a false. Otherwise, we want to do a true. Okay, so then we can kind of copy this to all of these checkboxes. This last one is actually not a checkbox. So if we do that, we should be good with the checkboxes. So we still have another error validation, and that's because of these push notifications. So I'm just going to check one of these. Now you can see a validation successful. Alright, so the first point being a checkbox, when you check it and it is checked, then it's going to be on. If it's not checked, then the value you're going to get back is null. So if you are expecting a boolean value, you need to do something like this to give it a boolean value. Now the second one I want to explore is radio buttons. Here we go. It's in this field set here, and right now it's a button group. And to make something a button group is you give all the radio buttons the same name, so it kind of groups them together, and then you can kind of get the thing by the name. So if I want to do something like push notifications, we'll see what this value gives us. Alright, so if we do a save, alright, so now push notifications are on. But that doesn't really help me, because any one of these is going to say push notifications on. So a checkbox is an on or off. A radio button group it has to be one of these radio buttons. And if it's just on, then I don't really know which one it is, right? So to remedy that, what we're going to do is add values to our radio buttons. Make sure there is a value. So let's find the radio buttons here. So value equals, I'm just going to use the same thing as the ID. So this one's going to be for push everything. This one's going to be for push email. This one's going to be for push nothing. Alright, so now they all have a value. Okay, so now if we do this again, let's try the everything one. We hit save. Alright, so now we can see push notifications is push everything. Push notifications is push email. And so on and so forth. Push notifications is push nothing. And you can kind of just store this value in your database so it knows which one of these you selected. The very last thing I want to touch on is the checkboxes again. So sometimes a checkbox will have a value as well, and then that will change that on thing. So let's try a value here. We can say this one is seeking product, sure, value. Alright, so what happens if we give a value to a checkbox? Well, if I check this on, and then I look in here, I think I need to turn this back on. Seeking product over here. Okay. Okay, so now instead of on, you get the value that it gives back. Okay, so the logic that we have still works because the seeking product is a string, and the logic that we had before is we don't really care if it's a string or what, just as long as it's not null. So it can be whatever value you want it to be. You just want it to be, if it's not null, then it'll be true. If it is null, then it'll be false. So this logic still applies. Yeah, that's it. That's the quick tip I want to give about form data, because I think more and more people are going to be using form data now, and there are little gotchas like that along the way.